Welcome back everyone, my name is David Bowler, I'm the creator of Kaos Moon and I'm a 30-year veteran of the comic book animation and gaming industry. Today I finally want to talk to you about what really happened with Kaos Moon. Why were there only 4 issues published plus a couple short stories and it went away for such a long period of time, yet still kind of like stayed in people's consciousness. We write the year about 1995. What happened was I just basically came off Marvel Comics for about 2 years. I've done a variety of books like Night Thrasher, Ghost Rider, just like lots and lots of books. But I was really sort of like disgruntled basically how the whole inking situation was handled, and Marvel was really pushing out books like crazy basically at the time. About 100 books, 120 books a month. So it was a complete factory type of situation, and I realized I really wasn't making progress as fast as I was hoping to. At the same time, there was also a resurgence of independent comics, like mostly black and white comics, which were still a lot cheaper to print than today. Today color printing isn't really that much of an issue, but back then it was like an insurmountable hurdle. And so I had the idea that I wanted to make something like creator owned, like something that really would, like, where I can sink my fangs and everything into it and just really make something creative and good and just advance my career. And I was also really getting basically into like studying the old masters, Alex Raymond, Winsor McKay, Alex Toth, Wally Wood. Like those people can really draw. And I realized that my artwork really needed to take the next step. So I had like this idea to create sort of like this paranormal, esoteric comic book series, which also featured a little bit of like good girl, bad girl art. I really liked drawing women at the time. And you also got to remember it was the time of the X-Files, it was the time of like cryptozoology, it was like all of that stuff basically. So I created this series called Kaos Moon, which is sort of like this medium living in New York who was channeling this like powerful spirit who could go like to any place and fight mythological creatures. It just leaves like a lot open, and again, I was a huge UFO fan. I was a huge fan of all kinds of different things like that. So it really made sense to do something like in that direction. So about in 1995, I drew the very first short story called The Goat Man of Central Park, which was over the top detailed. I mean, I was just going crazy on that basically. And even to this point, it's probably the craziest Kaos Moon story ever done. You can barely see what's going on. It's so cluttered with detail. But I really liked the idea the whole thing was going, and I started sending it out to some people. One of the people was Joe Pruitt from Negative Burn. Negative Burn was a pretty big anthology magazine at the time, and he instantly accepted it. And I sent it to about 8 publishers, like just a whole package, also have made some character designs and written up some storylines and everything. So I sent this to about 8 different publishers, and 6 of them answered within like the first week, and they all wanted to publish it. So I knew I basically had something good. But Joe Pruitt at the time, he was working for Caliber Comics, was well known, for The Crow, of course, Dead World, and Kabuki was doing really well at the time as a black and white comic. And he had a twin brother called James Pruitt, or Jim, and he also really liked it. And Caliber basically made me a pretty good offer that was sort of like a really good revenue share. I mean, I knew in independent comics you wouldn't get like page rates and stuff like that, but at least it was sort of like I kept all the IP, I would keep all the rights, and there would be a revenue share of like 50%, I think it was at the time, which was much better than what the other ones were offering. At the same time, I was talking to an old friend of mine from heavy metal in Germany, and he also really liked the storyline, and he says, yeah, we could publish this in a heavy metal magazine, you get paid the page rate, and we'll come publish the graphic novel, and you get royalties of that. So I figured, okay, good, between the US and Europe, this seems like a pretty good business proposition. So now that was, you gotta remember, that the year 1995. So I started working on it, and the first comic book in US was scheduled for October, that was like September, I think it was like September 1996. We got a lot of pre-orders, Now I also got to remember this was the time of the alternate covers, which still of course are a thing today, but back at the time it was really, really big. So there's about 5 different like major retailers and stores that signed up for alternate covers. So our entire print run basically predicted was about 27,000. Now 27,000 today, it's enormous, you know, but even at the time it was actually pretty good, you know, especially for a new IP, a new title. You know, I wasn't really that terribly well known, you know, and so I figured that like with the revenue split and everything like that, I would probably net about $15,000. So I'm like, yeah, okay, $15,000 per book, that would be pretty good. Plus the German income, I should be able to make a decent living. Then in 1996, as the solicitations went through, an absolute disaster happened. In July of 1996, Capital Distribution, the second largest distributor, filed for bankruptcy. It wasn't completely out of nowhere, but it still was kind of like a surprise. I think it was a surprise to everybody. And that changed the game completely. That was exactly in that period where the book was solicited and where the book was supposed to ship. So the news was essentially, okay, good. You know, as a result of that, your orders of 27,000 have been reduced to about 7,000. Some of the people who commissioned alternate covers just went bankrupt. So most of those kind of like fell off, and some of them were actually published, but right after publication, we either didn't get paid or they just disappeared. So that was a huge, huge problem. You know, then the other problem was that Capital owed a lot of money to a lot of the publishers. And I'm not talking about like, you know, $5,000 there. I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. And most smaller publishers were struggling. I'm talking about Antarctic Press, Caliber, like a lot of those, like I would say mid-size independent comic book publishers were seriously struggling because they realized they aren't going to get paid. Then Diamond Kate basically came in, and Diamond says, well, you know what, we make you a deal, we'll pay you the entire money up, or almost the entire money up front, or we'll pay it off over a certain period of time, and you're sort of like exclusive of us. So Diamond sort of shouldered some of the burden of Capital. You know, that helped a little, you know, it wasn't like the end of it. But basically what that meant was that not only were my orders cut in a quarter, basically a little more than a quarter of what they were before, it also basically meant that Caliber really wasn't that solvent anymore. So the book shipped in October and it was well received. It was actually nominated for a Ross Manning Award at the San Diego Comic-Con. So everything was good, people were excited about it. I went to actually a New York comic show, I think, I forgot exactly what it was, but it was a complete sellout. I mean, people were just standing there, I just sold everything. So it was really, really good. But Caliber just, you know, I'm not blaming Caliber, but that's just the way it was. They just were not solvent. So when all was said and done, out of the expected 15,000, I received $900, and that was it. And there wasn't really going to be much more. And maybe it came in a couple hundred in sooner or later, but Caliber just really was not able to really keep going at the same pace as they were before. And of course that put a huge dent into the plans. Now at the same time, to add to the drama, what happened in Germany was that the German publisher from heavy metal was sued by an overeager Christian right-wing district attorney for publishing some of the more, you know, erotic, like European material. We're talking about Serpieri, and there was also a Frank Miller comic that was in there basically, and that guy really said, I'm gonna make a career out of ruining these people's lives. So literally, it was one of those situations where the police came into the warehouse, confiscated everything. It's a little like Nazi times basically. That was kind of what it was compared to. Confiscated everything, and they were struggling because they all of a sudden they were facing huge legal bills. They were in the right. They basically got right every time they went to court. The judge said, this is ridiculous, what the hell are you doing? And that district attorney just kept added and added and added. And in the end, they went to the German Supreme Court and they won. But they were out of money. So about 1997 and 1998, they also ceased to exist. So Caliber ceased to exist, 1998, German heavy metal ceased to exist. So basically, the entire base for Kaos Moon was destroyed, you know, from a publishing point of view. Then there was like Avatar yeah, they came in and they said, well, you know, we really like your work and stuff like that. Why don't you do a few stories for us? But the problem was like that after this experience, I said, yeah, well, you have to pay me up front, you know. So I did 2 stories. These are the Song of the Siren and the Harem Secret. Harem Secret is going to be included in the Kickstarter main book, which there is also a color version of it. And but Avatar didn't have the funds or the interest in like continuing the series, you know, at the cost that because they paid me actually quite well for the short stories at the time, but there just was not enough interest. And also you got to remember, as disastrous as this was basically for the project, it was even more disastrous for the industry in general. As a matter of fact, the industry never recovered from 1996. Literally everything went down like by 80%. It's like one of those crypto disasters, or like where like a meme coin just like, you know, gets rug pulled or something like that, or like a stock gets, or like Enron stock gets like destroyed. It's like one of those things. You have like this candle, and then the candle basically goes down to zero. And there's very few times when sales actually went back up, you know, for select titles to what they were before. You know, but back at the time, and I'm just telling you, like back at the time at Marvel, they used to have a royalty cutoff of 40,000. So you basically work out royalties if you hit 40,000 in sales, and almost every title made that. You know, when I was drawing Night Thrasher, which is one of the new Warrior titles, which, let's be honest, wasn't the best-selling title, you know, we still made almost over 40,000 every single book. When I did Spider-Man, we did between 80 and 150,000. So these were just completely different times. And after 1996, as far as I'm concerned, the comic book pamphlet industry is essentially dead. You get your occasional hit, but that's pretty much it. So then I tried to revive Kaos Moon a couple times. We had a company called Tusk Entertainment, but it was just too scattered, and again, you know, the industry just really wasn't there anymore, so it was very difficult to do anything. We sold a few thousand copies, but it just really wasn't, I think it just wasn't really like, my heart wasn't in it anymore in terms of comics stuff. I started working on an anime version. I was really into anime at the time too, and manga and stuff like that, so I started working on an anime version because that's kind of like where I saw, like, you know, there was a lot more possibilities. So Kaos Moon would have been basically a great sort of like anime in the way of, like, you know, like Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust, like something like that. However, you know, today we of course know that the main sales from anime came from DVDs, and DVDs are not a thing anymore. So that's been sort of like a different sort of like thing. Now Kaos Moon got revived again. There was one more book published. I'm going to talk about this a little later. That is not part of this project. That is in a more anime manga type of style, which actually was very well received, but it has never really been published, but it will be published soon probably. And then about 3 years ago, I had the idea to do a trading card game, also like with crypto involved, an NFT trading card game, and that did really well. And actually there's a lot of new people coming in and seeing this artwork for the first time and saying like, wow, this is like awesome. Now these trading cards were also animated, so that sort of like sets it apart from a lot of other things. You can actually go to the website and see some of the examples and judge for yourself, but I think it really adds like a new thing to the overall project. So where do we stand today? I will definitely pursue the trading card game. That other story that has not been published yet will definitely be published soon. And other than that, this will basically, this Kickstarter edition, this like I call it Shaman Rising, the complete edition, will be a standalone complete edition as a classic for whatever has been done. And there is also a stretch goal in the campaign. If you go check there, if we hit 100,000, then we will create a brand new graphic novel, European size, hardcover, brand new story, 48 pages. And then, you know, the journey will continue. And if the Kickstarter is a success, maybe we'll do another Kickstarter for a new story. I'm totally open to just about anything, but I'm really focusing on a trading card game right now, and maybe an anime version. So, yeah. That's the story and a little bit of an industry business lesson. So thank you very much for everybody tuning in. Please subscribe and check out my other videos. I'm going to have a lot more coming up about the Kaos Moon Kickstarter. I'll have a lot more coming up about the upcoming games. And yeah, thanks for following me, and I appreciate that. Bye.